drive, Phil's studio is filled with anticipation. Tungsten lights cast an almost clinical glow over the central stage, while hundreds of curious eyes from the audience converge on the woman sitting on the edge of the chair, as if ready to flee at any moment. Sarah Johnson, 34, has her brown hair neatly pulled back in a bun, but a few stray strands escape, reflecting the state of her mind, orderly on the surface, but crumbling inside. Her slender fingers are intertwined so tightly in her lap that her knuckles are whitened, and her wedding ring feels strangely heavy on her left hand. She has been a primary school teacher for 12 years, loved by her students, respected by her colleagues, and a devoted mother of 2 children, Emma, 8, and Lucas, 6, today. However, she barely recognizes herself. Before we delve into this shocking story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. And please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what you thought of this case. Your opinion is crucial for us to continue bringing you heartwarming content. On the opposite side of the stage, separated by a calculated distance of almost 3 meters, Michael Johnson, 38, maintains a defensive posture, arms crossed over his chest like invisible shields. A marketing executive with a charismatic smile who won over not only Sarah 9 years ago, but also everyone around him. His impeccably tailored navy blue suit and perfectly adjusted tie seem to serve as armor against the accusations hanging in the air. There's something in his eyes, a calculating, almost predatory glint, that the cameras capture in occasional close-ups and transmit to millions of American homes. Among them, like a referee in an emotional minefield, Dr. Phil McGraw observes every movement, every breath, every micro-expression. His steps are measured and deliberate as he finally approaches center stage, the silence amplifying the echo of his shoes on the floor. Decades of experience analyzing human behavior lend him an aura of unwavering authority. As he finally addresses the main camera, his stern expression signaling that this is no ordinary case of marital difficulties. Today, he says, his Texas voice echoing through the studio, "We have a case that has deeply troubled me since the moment I read the file." Phil turns to Sarah, his eyes softening slightly, a woman who has slowly become convinced that she is losing her sanity, a seemingly concerned husband dedicated to helping her, and a story that, the more the team and I investigate, the less sense it makes unless you look at it through very different lenses. Sarah takes a deep breath, a visible tremor running through her body as she tries to maintain her composure. Tears begin to well up in the corners of her eyes, turning the amber brown into glistening pools of pain. "Dr. Phil," she begins, her voice cracking at the edges like shattered glass. "For the past 2 years, my life has turned into a nightmare I can't comprehend. I started losing things at first, small items, my keys, a favorite pen, nothing extraordinary." She pauses, swallowing hard, as if the words were physically stuck in her throat. "But then, it was important work documents, family jewels that belonged to my grandmother, credit cards. I thought it was just stress, with 2 young children, a full-time job. Who wouldn't get a little disorganized?" A sad, self-deprecating smile crosses her face. "But then, I started forgetting important appointments. A meeting with the school principal, my daughter's best friend's birthday party, the boy's doctor's appointment." She glances quickly at Michael, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before continuing. "And then strange things started happening. Michael found our car with a deep scratch on the side, but I don't remember hitting anything. I got calls from coworkers asking why I'd sent rude emails criticizing their classes, but I would never write anything like that. I found charges on my credit card for stores I'd never been to." Sarah finally lets a tear roll down her pale face. "My family doctor suggested I might have early onset dementia, referred me to specialists, and ordered tests. I'm taking medications that make me dizzy and confused." But she hesitates, looking at her husband with a mixture of fear and doubt that makes the audience collectively hold their breath. "Sometimes, in moments of clarity, I have this unsettling feeling that none of this is real, that I'm not crazy, that something very wrong is happening around me, not inside me." Michael undoes his arms and leans forward, his expression etched with lines of concern that seem rehearsed to a close observer. "Dr. Phil," his voice is deep, reasonable, controlled, the voice of a rational man facing an irrational situation. "It's absolutely devastating to see my wife in this state. Sarah has always been the rock of our family, brilliant, organized, The teacher parents beg to have their children in her class. He looks at her with what appears to be genuine sadness. Now, I find her medication scattered in the trash. She leaves the stove on for hours. Forgets to pick the children up from school. He runs a hand through his meticulously styled hair, a steady gesture of frustration. I've tried everything. Organized her medications in boxes with alarms, installed reminder apps on her phone, hired a babysitter to help with the kids when I'm traveling for work. But in the last few months, she started accusing me of manipulating her reality, of deliberately hiding things from her, even of tampering with her food. His voice breaks slightly. It's like she needs a villain to explain what's happening, and I've been chosen for that role. He looks directly at Dr. Phil, his eyes shining with apparent sincerity. I love her more than anything. I just want my wife back. Our children need their mother back. Dr. Phil nods gravely, absorbing the testimony of both. While the audience remains in sepulchral silence, the tension in the air almost palpable. A woman in the third row presses a handkerchief against her eyes, visibly moved by the situation. This is an extraordinarily complex case, Dr. Phil says finally, his voice measured, and one that requires us to look beyond the obvious. The studio atmosphere subtly shifts as Dr. Phil rises, moving like a seasoned investigator at a crime scene. The lighting seems to intensify on his face as he observes the couple with keen eyes. Years of clinical experience allowing him to detect subtle inconsistencies that would go unnoticed by most. The way Michael's eyes drift slightly to the right when mentioning Sarah's medications, the calculated tension in his jaw when he shows concern, the perfect timing of their emotional expressions. Sarah, says Dr. Phil, turning completely to her, deliberately positioning his body as a partial barrier between her and Michael. In the medical records you agreed to share with us, I noted that your symptoms began approximately 6 months after Michael was promoted to executive vice president of your company. This meant more responsibility, more pressure, more business trips, correct? Sarah nods slowly. Yes. He started traveling at least a week a month. It was difficult with the children, but I was happy for him. It was what he always wanted. And what was your life like, your memory, your organization before this period? Asks Dr. Phil, his voice gentle but insistent. Sarah pauses, as if trying to recover not just memories, but her own identity. I was known for being organized. My fellow teachers always joked that my planner was like a work of art. I never forgot birthdays, appointments. I coordinated the entire family calendar. A flash of her former confidence crosses her face before fading. It's so strange. It's like I became a different person overnight. Dr. Phil nods, taking a few steps back before turning to Michael. And how was it for you, Michael, to see this change in your wife? Terrible, Michael replies immediately, perhaps too quickly. Sarah has always been the backbone of our home. To see someone so capable deteriorate, it's like a nightmare in slow motion. Dr. Phil crosses his arms, his posture mirroring Michael's from minutes before. When exactly did you begin to realize something was wrong? Michael hesitates, almost imperceptibly. It was gradual, little things at first. She stopped paying a bill. Then she forgot her mother's birthday. Then she started losing important objects. Interesting, observes Dr. Phil, his tone subtly shifting. Sarah, when did you begin to suspect that perhaps you weren't the problem? Sarah glances nervously at Michael before answering, a quick eye movement that the cameras capture in close-up for millions of viewers. It was when my sister, Jennifer, came to visit us about 3 months ago. She lives in Seattle, so we don't see each other often. We were talking about how I'd been forgetful, and she said something like, "That doesn't sound like you, Sarah." It was validating, you know, someone who's known me forever not immediately believing I was losing my mind. She wrings her hands in her lap. On that same visit, Jennifer was in the kitchen early one morning and saw Michael stirring my tea. He always makes my tea before he goes to work, a sweet gesture that started when my symptoms worsened. Sarah swallows hard. Jennifer saw him putting something in the tea, a white powder. When she asked what he was doing, Michael said he was sweetening it for me. But doctor, she looks directly at Dr. Phil, I never put sugar in my tea, never. And Michael knows that. He jokes about how I can drink leaf water without sweetening it. A murmur runs through the audience, and Dr. Phil raises an eyebrow, sitting up straighter. And what did you do with that information, Sarah? I stopped drinking the tea he made, secretly. I'd throw it away when he wasn't looking, or say it was too hot, and I'd wait for it to cool down. And I noticed that on the days I didn't drink the tea, I felt clearer, more myself. Michael, doctor. Phil turns abruptly. Would you like to comment on that? Michael sighs deeply, a look of frustration crossing his face as he shakes his head. Sarah's sister is exaggerating a completely innocent incident. Yes, I put something in her tea, but it wasn't sugar. It was a natural supplement that her neurologist suggested might help with cognitive function. Ashwagandha, I think that was the name. He looks at the audience, his body language open, as if inviting everyone to understand his situation. Sarah often forgets or refuses to take her medication. She has this resistance to the idea that she needs medical help. So, sometimes, I have to be a little creative. He looks at his wife, his expression softening. Honey, I know it wasn't the most direct approach, but I was desperate to help you get better. Maybe it was wrong not to tell you, and for that I apologize. Dr. Phil observes the interaction, his face impassive, before resting his chin on his hand. Let me see if I understand correctly, Michael. You're saying that you regularly administer medication to your wife without her knowledge or consent. His voice is deliberately neutral, but it carries an underlying weight of authority. Because, regardless of your intentions, this raises serious ethical and legal questions. They're not controlled substances, doctor, just natural supplements. Michael replies quickly, a slight blush rising to his neck. The doctor said they might help, and I'd do anything to see her get better, doctor. Phil nods slowly, as if absorbing the information, then stands, deliberately walking across the stage, his hands clasped behind his back. I know you both agreed to undergo a series of independent psychological and medical evaluations before coming on the show today. Our teams have also reviewed all the medical, financial, and communication records that you both voluntarily provided. He stops a few feet from Sarah. Sarah, when we spoke before the show, you mentioned something about cameras in your house. Can you tell us about that? Sarah straightens her posture, a spark of determination finally igniting in her eyes. The last rays of the afternoon sun stream through the studio windows, illuminating her face in a way that makes her seem stronger, more substantial than just minutes before. 3 weeks ago, when Michael was on a business trip to Chicago, my sister came to stay with me. She brought small security cameras, the kind you can buy online. We installed 4 of them around the house, in the office where I keep my documents, in the kitchen, in our bedroom, and in the living room. Michael adjusts himself in his chair, a movement that is almost imperceptible, but the cameras capture the sudden stiffening of his shoulders, the slight narrowing of his eyes. I needed to know, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. I needed to find out if I was really forgetting things, losing objects, sending emails I didn't remember, or if something else was happening, something I could barely admit to myself as a possibility. The studio seems to shrink, as if the space itself is reacting to the growing tension. The main lights subtly dim, creating a more intimate and intense atmosphere, almost like an interrogation room. Drive-out Phil makes an almost imperceptible signal to his producer, Robin, who discreetly nods back. The next moment, a large, flat monitor silently descends from the ceiling, positioning itself so that both the audience and the guests can see it clearly. The anticipation is palpable. Some audience members lean forward in their seats, others cover their mouths with their hands. An elderly woman in the front row squeezes her husband's hand, her eyes never leaving the stage. A young woman in the back of the studio watches intently, taking notes in a notebook, perhaps a psychology or journalism student. Michael, says Dr. Phil, his voice deliberately calm, almost paternal, before we show you anything on this monitor, I'd like to give you an opportunity, a chance to tell us the whole truth about what's been happening in your home for the past 2 years. His voice is controlled, his eyes intense and focused, like a beacon in the darkness. This is your chance to tell your side of the story, on your terms. Michael glances at the still dark monitor, then at Sarah, then at Drive-Out Phil. A muscle involuntarily clenches in his jaw, and his previous confidence seems to evaporate like dew under the scorching sun. I don't know what you're talking about, he says, but his voice betrays uncertainty. What footage? What does Sarah think she captured? Sarah watches her husband, a strange calm replacing her previous nervousness. It's as if the proximity of the truth strengthens her, while simultaneously destabilizing Michael. Doctor. Phil keeps his eyes fixed on Michael for another moment, as if offering one last silent chance before making another sign. The monitor lights up, showing an image divided into 4 quadrants, each display in a different room in the Johnson house. The date in the lower corner of the screen indicates that the footage is from 10 days ago. As you can see, Dr. Phil explains, these are the images from the cameras Sarah installed. We're going to show you some specific sequences that our editorial team selected. He turns to Sarah. Sarah, you reviewed these images earlier, correct? She nods, visibly swallowing. Yes. Jennifer and I watched it together. It was shocking. The image on the monitor changes to show only 1 quadrant, Sarah's home office. The time reads 11:48 p.m. Michael enters the room, glancing cautiously over his shoulder before closing the door. He goes directly to Sarah's desk, opens a drawer, and removes her laptop. After turning it on, he taps something, presumably the password, and begins browsing files. The camera clearly captures him opening Sarah's email and starting to send messages. The scene shifts to the kitchen the following morning. Michael is preparing tea, exactly as Sarah described. He takes a small vial from the inside pocket of his jacket, glances quickly behind him, and pours a white powder into the cup, stirring carefully. The monitor then shows the master bedroom. Michael is rummaging through Sarah's jewelry, removing a pair of pearl earrings from a box and putting them in his pocket. Next, he rummages through her pill organizer, replacing some capsules with nearly identical ones. The audience gasps collectively at the undeniable evidence. Sarah covers her mouth with her hands, tears streaming freely down her face. Even though she's seen the footage before, seeing her private nightmare exposed publicly brings a new wave of emotion. Michael is visibly shaken, his face alternating between paleness and blushing. His eyes move rapidly, as if searching for a physical or rhetorical escape. This is completely out of context. He begins, his voice trembling slightly. You're editing these images to make them look like something they're not. Doctor. Phil raises his hand, interrupting him. There's more, Michael. And believe me, when I say what comes next is even more disturbing. His voice carries a weight he rarely shows on camera. Technical crew, show the video from Wednesday night. Turn up the volume, please. The image on the monitor changes to show Michael in a living room, alone, speaking softly on the phone. It's 1:12 a.m. The audio is clear. Yes, the plan is working perfectly, Michael says. A note of triumph in his voice that Sarah has clearly never heard before. She fully believes she's losing her mind. The doctor, the one I recommended, has already documented symptoms consistent with early onset dementia in her medical record. He chuckles softly, a sound that sends chills down Sarah's spine. The best part is she doesn't even question the medication I'm giving her. It's not the supplements the doctor prescribed. I got something stronger through that contact you gave me. When we finally get her admitted to the hospital, I'll have complete control over our finances and the house. The lawyer said that with her mental condition documented, custody of the children won't be a problem. A pause as he listens to the person on the other end. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Her sister was here recently, but I managed to convince her that Sarah needs professional help. That idiot even hugged me, thanking me for being so patient with her troubled sister. Another laugh, a few more weeks, and the whole life we've built will be exclusively mine. And Sarah? Well, she'll just be another crazy person in a psychiatric hospital, unable to convince anyone that she was a victim. A sepulchral silence falls over the studio. Michael's face loses all color, as if his blood had been drained instantly. Sarah lets out an anguished sob, a primal sound of betrayal and horror that echoes through the silent studio. Some members of the audience are openly weeping, others seem stunned, unable to process the calculated cruelty they have just witnessed. Dr. Phil remains completely still for several seconds, his face a mask of controlled fury and determination. His years of experience as a clinical psychologist and presenter hadn't fully prepared him for the level of manipulation and abuse the evidence revealed. Then, in a move completely unexpected by both the audience and the production crew, he turned sharply to the stage manager. Stop all cameras, right now. His voice thunders through the studio with an authority that suffices not to be questioned. The red lights on the cameras flash and go out. I want this studio emptied. Everyone except essential staff, the Johnsons and security, immediately. The audience murmurs in confusion, but the seriousness in Dr. Phil's voice is unmistakable. Production assistants quickly begin guiding spectators toward the exits. Michael rises abruptly, as if planning to leave with the crowd. but two security guards discreetly positioned themselves near him. Sarah remained seated, appearing simultaneously relieved and devastated. Like someone who has finally received a diagnosis for a mysterious illness, the truth is terrible. But at least now she knows she's not crazy. As the last member of the audience is escorted out, the studio transforms into a completely different space. The main production lights are switched off, leaving only soft, direct lighting on the three individuals in the center: Dr. Phil, Sarah, and Michael. The vast, now almost empty space amplifies every sound. The distant hum of the air conditioning system, Michael's rapid, shallow breathing, Sarah's occasional stifled sob. The few remaining crew members, the executive producer, the security guards, a legal advisor, and producer Robin, stay in the shadows on the periphery. A heavy silence hangs in the air, broken only by the distant sound of doors closing as the last members of the audience leave. Dr. Phil remains standing, his shoulders stiff with the contained tension he rarely shows on air. His voice, when it finally breaks the silence, resonates in the empty space. "Michael," he says, each syllable laden with gravity, "what you have just witnessed is only a fraction of what we have." He pauses, letting the words settle like heavy stones. "Sarah didn't just install cameras in your home. Our team, with her cooperation and all the necessary legal authorizations, conducted a thorough investigation of your activities over the past 2 years. Phil signals to a man who was discreetly positioned backstage. A tall man with a military bearing advances in the light. His gray hair and piercing eyes suggest decades of experience observing the worst of humanity, without losing compassion. "I am Robert Garrison, former detective with the Phoenix Domestic Crimes Unit and current private security consultant. For the past 15 days, my team and I have systematically documented Mr. Johnson's behavior, following all legal protocols for private investigations." Garrison opens a folder and takes out several photos, placing them on a nearby table. "We have evidence of regular adulteration of medications, not natural supplements, Mr. Johnson, but prescription sedatives mixed into Mrs. Johnson's tea. We document extensive manipulation of digital communications, including fake emails sent from her account to coworkers and school administrators, designed to gradually compromise her professional reputation." The detective places another photo on the table, Michael leaving a pharmacy with a small package. "We have you on video acquiring controlled substances using a false identity. We also documented deliberate orchestrations of situations to make Mrs. Johnson doubt her mental faculties, from hiding important objects and then finding them in places where she supposedly left them, to manipulating the car's speedometer to make her believe she was driving at a dangerous speed without realizing it." Michael stands up abruptly, his face contorted in a mask of indignation. "This is completely illegal. You can't record me without my consent. You can't follow me or investigate me without a warrant. I'll sue this program until—" "Sit down, Michael," orders Dr. Phil, his voice carrying an authority few have witnessed. There's no trace of the charismatic host in this moment, just the man who spent decades working with criminals and victims before becoming a television celebrity. Texas is a state of unilateral consent for recordings. As the legal co-owner of the residence, Sarah has every right to install security systems in her own home. The private investigation was conducted in full legal compliance, including proper documentation. But this is only the beginning of what we uncovered. Dr. Phil picks up a brown folder that his assistant discreetly places in his hands. "While investigating your case, our legal team noticed some discrepancies in your personal documentation. Further checks revealed something deeply disturbing." He pulls out a sheet of paper and holds it up for Michael to see. "This is your official credit and background check. Interestingly, it begins just 7 years ago." Dr. Phil looks Michael straight in the eye. "You're not Michael Johnson, are you? Your real name is Matthew Jameson, and this isn't the first time you've done this." The revelation hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Sarah stares at the man she thought was her husband, horrified, as Michael's or Matthew's entire facade begins to visibly crumble. His shoulders slump. The mask of indignation slips away to reveal something colder, more calculating beneath. "We have documentation linking you to previous cases in Oregon and Colorado," Dr. Phil continued, placing more documents on the table: police reports, photos of other women, newspaper clippings. "Amy Donaldson in Portland, 2016. Rebecca Chambers in Denver, 2019. Both reported symptoms similar to Sarah's after marrying you under different names. Martin Jameson, and Mark Jefferson, respectively, Detective Garrison interjects, his voice professional and emotionless. In both cases, you disappeared with a good portion of these women's financial assets when things started to get complicated. Amy Donaldson managed to rebuild her life, but Rebecca Chambers. He pauses, his voice hardening. Rebecca is still in psychiatric treatment, convinced that she suffers from a debilitating mental condition that you meticulously fabricated. Sarah, who until now seemed completely devastated, finds a spark of strength amidst the horror. She rises, slowly, her legs trembling, but her spine straight. You did this before? All this time, our 9 years together, our children. Was it all planned from the beginning? Her voice trembles, but there's a growing resolve in it, like steel being forged in fire. You made me think I was going crazy. You made our children think their mother was losing her mind. You made my family, my friends, my colleagues, everyone look at me with pity. The enormity of the betrayal seems to finally overwhelm her completely, but instead of shattering her, it seems to solidify something fundamental within her. Why? For the life insurance money from my father that I received. For the house we bought mostly with my inheritance. Was it worth destroying 3 lives for, counting Rebecca, for this? Michael. Matthew remained seated, motionless, his eyes calculating exits, evaluating options like a cornered predator. When he finally speaks, his voice is different, colder, harder, without the veneer of concern he had cultivated so carefully. You know nothing, Sarah. You don't know how easy it is to make someone doubt themselves, especially women so desperately eager to believe in love and family and happily ever after. A cold smile crosses his face. 3 years. That's usually how long it takes. 3 years of small doubts planted like seeds, small incidents, small coincidences, until they are ripe for harvest. Phil steps forward, positioning himself between Sarah and Michael. Matthew, this conversation is over. Security, please escort Mr. Jameson to the waiting room. The authorities have already been notified. He turns to Sarah, his voice softening. Sarah, you are safe now. Your children are safe, and you will get through this, I promise. 3 months later, the studio is once again fully lit, but the atmosphere is radically different from the claustrophobic tension of that fateful day. Sarah sits alone with Dr. Phil, her appearance transformed. Her hair, once rigidly tied back, falls in loose waves over her shoulders. She sits upright, her eyes clear and focused, a renewed confidence radiating from her posture. She wears a vibrant red blazer, a color choice her ex-husband always criticized as too flashy for a mother. So, Sarah, Dr. Phil says gently, leaning slightly forward in his chair, it's been 3 months since that extraordinary day in our studio. How has the journey been since then? Sarah smiles, a genuine gesture that reaches her eyes, something that hadn't happened in years. Difficult, but incredibly liberating. Phil. The first few days were the worst, explaining to the children that their father wasn't who we thought he was, dealing with the shame and humiliation of having been so completely deceived for so long. She looks down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. But therapy has helped immensely. My children are incredibly resilient, more than I ever imagined. And the support I've received from my family, friends, even strangers who saw the show, it's been overwhelming. She raises her eyes, a glint of determination in them. And knowing that I'm not crazy, that I never was, there are no words to describe this relief. It's like regaining not only my sanity, but my entire identity. Has he gone back to teaching? Asks Phil. Part-time for now. The school was incredibly understanding when the truth came out. I'm mainly focusing on reconnecting with my children, rebuilding their trust in me as a mother. They were confused for so long about why mommy was sick. Now we're healing together. Dr. Phil nods, understandingly, and Michael, or should I say Matthew, a momentary shadow crosses Sarah's face. Before her expression clears again, he's in custody awaiting trial. The charges are extensive: fraud, aggravated psychological harassment, identity theft, obtaining controlled substances through fraudulent means, and much more. The other 2 women you met, Amy and Rebecca, are also giving testimony. She looks directly at the camera, as if she can see other potential victims through it. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm deeply grateful for that terrible moment on your show. That's when my life truly began to be saved. Dr. Phil stands and walks to the center of the stage, turning to the camera with a serious, Contemplative expression. That day, I broke every rule of our television format. In 20 years of production, I never ordered the studio to be cleared mid-recording. I never interrupted filming of an episode so abruptly. But there are moments in life when humanity must take precedence over spectacle, when a person's safety is more important than any protocol or audience rating. He takes a deep breath, his gaze intense and direct at the camera. What Michael, or Matthew, was doing to Sarah has a specific name in psychology: gaslighting. It's a particularly insidious form of psychological abuse where the abuser deliberately manipulates the victim, making them question their own sanity, memory, and perception of reality. The term comes from a 1938 play called Gaslight, where a husband tries to drive his wife insane by manipulating small elements of the environment, including the gaslights that dimmed. When he searched for jewelry in the attic, walking slowly across the stage, Dr. Phil continues, his voice carrying the weight of experience. This type of abuse is insidious precisely because it attacks what makes each of us fundamentally human: our perception of reality, our trust in our own senses and memories, our basic identity. It is a slow and calculated erosion of a person's essence, designed to create dependence and control. He stops and looks directly at the camera, his expression intensifying. I interrupted that program because at that moment, I realized we were dealing with something potentially dangerous. Matthew wasn't just a manipulative husband. He was a serial predator with an established and escalating pattern of behavior. The physical and mental safety of Sarah and her children was potentially in imminent danger. Dr. Phil shakes his head, recalling the moment when we saw that footage, especially the phone conversation where he so coldly discussed Sarah's institutionalization plan. I knew we needed to act immediately. Some might say that interrupting the program was too dramatic. I would say it wasn't dramatic enough given what was at stake. He looks at the audience, his gaze sweeping over the attentive faces. For anyone watching who feels like they're losing control of their reality, who's constantly doubting themselves because of someone else's words or actions, this isn't normal. This isn't love. This is abuse. And you deserve help. You deserve to be heard and believed. Dr. Phil returns to his seat next to Sarah, now with a gentler expression. Sarah, your courage in installing those cameras, in seeking the truth even when it was terrifying, probably saved not only your life, but also prevented Matthew from finding his next victim. You are a survivor, not a victim, and your story has already helped countless people recognize the signs of gaslighting in their own relationships. Sarah smiles through the tears that threaten to fall. I've learned that trusting my instincts isn't paranoia. Sometimes, that little voice inside us that says something is wrong is the most important voice to listen to. She takes a deep breath. I tell people now, if you're starting to doubt your own sanity, first ask yourself if you're really losing your mind, or if someone is deliberately trying to make you think that. Ask yourself who benefits from your self-questioning, your doubt, your fear. Often, the answer is right in front of you. The camera zooms in as Dr. Phil makes his final statement, the soft light capturing the lines of experience on his face. That day, we broke protocol because truth and human safety demanded it. Sometimes, rules must be broken so that lives can be rebuilt. And if there's one lesson to be learned from Sarah's extraordinary and disturbing story, it's this: trust yourself. And if you can't trust yourself because someone has systematically destroyed that trust, find an outsider, a friend, a family member, a therapist who can help you rebuild your reality. Because everyone deserves to live in truth, no matter how painful it may be initially. He looks directly at the camera, his voice carrying a final note of determination. And to predators like Matthew, know that the world is watching. Victims are increasingly finding their voice, and society is finally beginning to listen to them. No matter how elaborate their scheme, the truth eventually comes out. As the show's theme music begins to play softly in the background, Dr. Phil looks at the camera one last time. Breaking protocol that day wasn't just a production decision. It was a statement that some things are more important than television. Humanity comes first. Always. And that's a protocol I will never, ever break. The camera slowly pulls back, capturing Dr. Phil and Sarah side by side, an image of victory against one of the most destructive forms of abuse, a silent testament to the power of truth and human resilience.